Hi team, Katie here from Equestrian Movement. We are doing June's coaching call, which is choice with our horses. So we're going to start today with just a little bit of coaching on the idea of choice and why we're going to use it. And then we've got a couple of different videos we can look at where we have implemented this. So choice with our horses is another way that we can work to empower our horses. So there's varying levels of how much permission we're gonna kind of give our horses to dictate what we do with them versus how much we're just gonna have to say, you have to do this one today because I say so. And the way that relationship plays out is going to be really dependent on you and your horse's unique personality and your personality. So choice is I'm going to brush you. Would you like this brush or this brush? I'm going to put a halter on you. Would you like this halter or this halter? I'm going to do something with you. Would you like this version of it or that version of it? So it's giving them a little bit more leeway to, still have a say in what's going to happen to them, and is still empowering to them where they have the option to choose which one you're going to use, and then that can get them, more on board and more keen with what you're doing. It also can help you understand your horse's personality. So some horses like firm brushes and really like it when you get in under their skin and give them a good scratch. Some horses like soft brushes. Some horses like the rope halters. Some horses like the soft halters. Some horses like the communication that comes from the bit. Some horses like the bitless bridle. And then we've played a little bit with different tools that we're going to use is like our whips as well. And when it came to using a tool for conversation with Gunnar, he preferred the dressage whip over the other tools that we had. I think purely because he understood what the answer was to it, and so it took the guesswork out of the scenario for him. So you want to think about if you're asking, should I get this bit or that bit? Should I get this rug or that rug? Should I get this brush or this brush? Should I get, should I use this halter or that halter? If you have the opportunity, you're going to ask your horse as often as you can, because, what might be right or might sound appropriate for, mainstream, just in general, I have my preferences, and I have those preferences because most horses are quite happy with those tools, but you're still going to have horses with unique personalities that have different preferences. When it comes to the bit, that in particular, because it has a lot to do with how big their tongue is within the size of their mouth. So if you have a really fine bit, they're considered to be harsher, but some horses prefer it because it doesn't take up so much room in their mouth. So when it comes to bits, working with a bit fitter, and then they can have a range of bits for you to try with your horse, and then you're going to have a feel around and see what your horse rides better in, and you can ask. By the time you're asking your horse what bit they want to ride in, though, you want to have choice fairly well established. So when, for example, when we first introduce consent to our horses, they don't know that they're consenting the tool or the ask, or yesing the ask, or anything like that, because basically we're just introducing them to the idea of targeting things. And it's over time that, we kind of wait until they target the object before we use it, that they start to realize that we're not going to use it on them until they target it, that they start to recognize there's like a level of permission that's happening there that we're asking for. And whether they recognize that they're giving permission or not, they are saying no or saying yes. And then if they are saying no, then we're waiting for the yes. And then there's like a pathway of consequence. So they know that if they don't target it, then we're not going to use it. But then when they do target it, we are going to use it. And so the other thing that plays a role there is that it's kind of, the question isn't going away until they do target it. So there's a level there of like, you know, tolerating it to kind of end the training session in general. But you know, ideally we're not kind of, this is where it's going to get really fickle. It's really going to depend on each scenario. Is that, you know, we might spend a period of time building up the consent and building up the permission and building up the horse's willingness to use that particular tool, and we're kind of trying to make that experience fun and exciting. So it's not even so much that like we're forcing the tool on them. It's like, how do we get the horse to want us to communicate through that tool? So without getting too theoretical about all of this, we can use where we've used this in practice. So for example, with Sarah and Stormy, Sarah was Stormy's first experience with being able to consent things. And so we started off with, you know, targeting to show him that he was consenting, but it's like a pathway of consequences. We can target the halter goes on, we can target the bridle goes on, we can target the saddle cloth goes on, we can target the saddle goes on, we can target the mounting block, the person goes on. So they're seeing that pathway of consequence, and when they don't target, it doesn't happen. So they're seeing what the no does as well. So initially, Stormy didn't recognize that he was consenting. We were just going through the process. Over a period of time, he started to target the object less and less and less. And so that was him recognizing that if he doesn't target, then it's not going to get used on him. So it stripped all the way back to like just being in the paddock, like caught and targeting the halter was like entry level. And so you're not then going to target the brush, target the bridle, target the saddle, target the mounting block. You're going to try and restructure the training session that turns like being caught into a game, something fun that they enjoy doing with you, bringing them in, spending some time together, turning them out, until they're enthusiastically consenting being caught in the halter. And then you're going to like build in the next tool and the next tool. So for example, we would target the saddle and he would get lunged, not ridden. He would target the bridle and we'd do in-hand work, not be ridden. So that the bridling process and the saddling process isn't associated with the mounting process. We can strip them all out separately and restructure the relationship with each individual tool before we kind of like bring it together into the full being ridden process. And then even when it comes to like targeting the mounting, you don't have to go out and start like training. You can just hop on, hop off again. So once you're going to like pull those elements together into getting ready to mount and into the saddle, then we can just do like on and off, consenting the mounting, and then we can do the ridden within the saddle for periods of time and build out like the fun in the riding as well. So basically when we first introduce consent, our horse doesn't know that it's giving permission, and then once they kind of figure it out that they can say no, that's when they unpack and they go back to like, probably that first no that they tried on that they got pushed through. So you'll have to go through that consent process most likely and have the targeting well established, understanding your emotional motivators with your horse, and being able to still set appropriate boundaries. You'll probably need all of that quite well established before you go into your choice work with your horse. But it's really going to be dependent on your horse. So the boundaries are really important with Fiddy so that he stays safe when he's working around us. But with Zodi, we can go into choice quite easily without him having to be reminded of minding his manners around us. And then some horses have really big opinions and some horses don't. So we'll see a lot of opinions unpack if our horse has been worked with pain. We'll have a lot of opinions unpacked if that's their personality. So that's like, that's really Fiddy's personality, is he's really got strong opinions on what he wants to do and what he wants to happen. So him saying no to the rug unless it's the right temperature, him choosing his brush, like they're all big opinions that he has, whereas the horses that we tend to think of typically as good horses or school horses or the easier horses to work with, they just are more tolerable and more accepting of what we do to them. So those ones, when we kind of give them an option, they don't really care. So if we give them 2 brushes to touch, they're like, meh, not really bothered, I don't mind. So it's really, this is, an additional aspect of working with your horse and getting to know them and getting to know what they like, what they don't like, if they're super opinionated, if they don't care less, where they are within that spectrum. Maybe there's certain things that they have strong opinions over, like their rug, if they're a horse that overheats easily, or like the brushes, if they do have sensitive skin. Like you might find one specific area where your horse has loud opinions, and every other scenario they're just like go with the flow kind of thing. So this is about you, your horse. Make sure you do the lesson plan so that you can, at the very least, what you want to kind of be doing is journaling some of these things and doing the reflection work, because that's where you're going to have your most aha moments. If you're just kind of applying it and being like, oh yeah, today we did this, and you don't really keep track of it, the purpose is 6 to 12 months from now you can look back, see where you're at. And if you're doing this kind of relationship work, you'll look back and you'll see how far you've come, because you'll see how much clearer you are on what your horse wants and who they are. And then down the future, it also might give you some tools for dealing with problems as they come up a bit easier. So if you're journaling it out and you go through a period of time and your horse was particularly difficult, and you're recording behaviors and things that are happening and that kind of thing, and maybe you find out that your horse has had ulcers, or if you see seasonal changes in their behavior, and you start to recognize that they're coming up with spring or winter or summer or whatnot. So being able to reflect on these things and journal and keep track of and keep notes of each scenario helps you when it comes up again. Because when we're working with our horse, we're not fixing them or fixing their personality or whatnot. We're getting to know them and figuring out how to work with them better. And so part of that process is just understanding how the seasons affect their mood, their nature, their hormonal fluctuations. So even our geldings, particularly at the school, one of our geldings got cut late as a 5-year-old because the owner was trying to decide if she's going to breed with him as a dressage pony or not. And so he gets quite stallion-y coming into spring because all the mares come on heat and he knows what it's about. So recognizing like the different temperaments and seasons and what they do like, what they don't like, is part of understanding who they are. And then you're not just going to like push them through it. If you see certain behaviors coming up, you're going to be like, oh, actually, I remember that there was a time that this happened recently. I don't really remember how I dealt with it or what we ended up figuring out. Go back, have a look at my notes. Or maybe you have a better memory than I do and you don't need notes to do that. But it is good to have that record to reflect on. Alright, let's have a quick look at some videos. So, it would help if I shared the screen. Okay, so we're going to have a look at Zodi to this one with choosing the brush. So one of the things that I've noticed with Fiddy is that he won't choose the curry comb unless he's like super dirty or he's had midgies and he's super itchy. So this is going to be a different scenario to if you like actually need to brush your horse, right? Like if you need them to just let you brush them, then you're going to go back and do our stand with relaxation, mind your manners kind of thing. Zodi is still fairly uncomfortable with me going down towards his hindquarters. So that's not something that I will do with him at this stage until he feels safer about me being around his hindquarters. I think that I could tie him up and he'd be fine, but I think he also has the potential for shutting down as well. So this is pretty like clear here. So there he's blocked me where I've tried to go down the left side of him. And then he's let me go down the right side of him. So this is a situation where he's like communicating with me quite clearly, and this is part of being at liberty, is that you're not actually in control of them and you're working on that communication and getting clear with them. So they're not going to let you do anything that they don't want you to do to them because they can take themselves away. Whereas if you have them in the halter and you're just getting them to stand up, then you're telling them to, just stand and accept what we're doing, which is fine. Like you can, we've talked about it. Sometimes you just need to do that, right? Sometimes you just need to get them to stand up and accept, because we need to do medical treatment if we have the vet out. Things like that. There might be situations where we have to say, stand, mind your manners, keep it together. Keep it together, son. And then we can build into that, a little bit more kind of consent work with our positive reinforcement training. So depending on where you're at with your horse is going to depend on, how far you're going to take that consent. If you're like freshly into the relationship and your horse doesn't let you catch them, you have very little chance of being able to ask them to stand up and mind their manners while you worm them or while, you get the dentist out or something like that. So it's all going to be like trusting your judgment and trusting what you know and the work that you've already done with the horse to figure out what is like most appropriate, and what you can do now is going to be different to what you can do in a year. So like when you're kind of starting with this work, you're just getting to know them and figuring things out that way. And so through experience, you'll start to figure out, oh, my horse doesn't like its back legs picked up, or it doesn't like its ears being touched, or it doesn't like this, or it doesn't like that. And so you can say, all right, well, I'm going to work on that one thing, and I'm going to improve that one thing. And in the process of working on that one thing, you'll figure out more about how to work with your horse, what tools you're going to implement, how they like to be reinforced, if they get hypervigilant with treats, if you need to use treats to get them engaged and motivated, like figuring out where that balance is for each individual horse. So Fiddy's a fun one. He's always good for a challenge, a learning curve. As I said, he doesn't like the curry comb unless he's been attacked by midges or he's covered in mud. And so he will rarely target the curry comb these days. So giving them the two options, the option in each hand, and then they can target it, and then you use that on them. So initially, even if they don't know what they're doing, you've already done your targeting and your consent work, so you're asking them to touch, and then over time they're going to figure out that they can choose whichever one they prefer. Over time they're going to give you confusing answers like Fiddy just did there, where he targeted both. Over time they're gonna start like showing a preference for one or the other. So you can see with that one, I was like, you just touched both of them. I don't really know which one that means. So I've just offered him the question again, and you know, part of this process is him being like, hey, I just don't really want to be brushed in general, so I'm not going to touch either of them. You know, it's a lot of patience, and I've just done a little backup there to say, hey, I'm talking to you. Can you listen to me? This is so funny. I think it's going to be really enjoyable over time, as my relationship gets better with Fiddy, to look back on some of our first videos together and just recognize how much he disliked me. There we go. One of the things that I've been doing with Fiddy recently is that I've been asking him to fist bump me after I give him a grain, because normally he pulls ugly faces and tells me to ping off around grain. And our relationship has come a long way, where he is no longer trying to hurt me, which is nice. So I don't feel unsafe with being around him at feed time. So I've been holding my hand out, and he has to touch my hand before I go away. So similar to how like I reintroduced myself to him. And he's gives me like the fine, and then touches my hand so he can go back to eating his grain. We've been doing that for a couple of months now, and he gets super frustrated by it. But he's really starting to come around and like give me, like, we're getting more towards looking like a cuddle and some like better quality connection from doing that for a long period of time. So that's a no. It's like, don't touch me, let me eat hay. So what I was trying to do was swap the brushes from each hand, so you could see that there was like a clear differentiation in like which one he wanted. Not that he was just picking a particular hand, but he has like very little interest in being groomed at all, ever. He does like the texture of the curry comb to chew on though. So he will quite happily take that as a chew toy. So another one of the situations that we've done with Fiddy with choice is whether or not he wants the rug on. And he's basically perfectly picked changes in temperature. So like if we're going to have a cold front come across, or rain in winter. So most of the time, he will not target the rug at all. And so if he doesn't target the rug, I don't put it on him. But we actually had a cold snap this time, and it's the first time he had targeted the rug since I had started doing this choice work with him. And I was like, classic Fitty. Because I was confused about it, right? It's like he never targets the rug. I was like, well, okay. So I put it on him and just really confused about the scenario. So normally if I put the rug on him, you know, at like off the lead, he would fidget around and be difficult to work with, basically. But you can see that if he's like actually consented the rug and asked to have it on, like he stands up perfectly for me to rug him. So it makes like our job a lot easier when we're doing things that our horse wants to do. So that first rugging was the beginning of the training session, and I thought it was a fluke that he just thought he was supposed to be doing targeting. And so I've asked him again at the end of the training session, and it's, you know, you're going to get mixed signals, you're going to get a little bit confused. Like that first one, I was like, are you sure you want the rug on, or are you just licking my hand? And then you can see like the second ask, he did touch it. So like, especially if you're in the beginnings of this process, you know, your horse is going to give you mixed signals. You're not going to be 100% confident in what they're actually saying to you, and you're gonna kind of fumble your way through it. But as you go, it will get clear and you'll understand what they're saying better. So one of the other situations that we've played a little bit with choice but not really taken it very far is the communication buttons. So ideally I would love to get to the point where I could have Fitty choose like being ridden in hand out on a adventure or games through the communication buttons. But so far we've just done the stop ready. So the communication buttons are the ones that you can get online where you push it and it says a word and you record the word into it, and they're coloured. I think the positioning is the most important part there. So I put Velcro on them and Velcroed them to a post and put ready as the top button and stop as the bottom button. And so I always have them in those two spots. And so what I would do would be press the ready button and then go into our treat earning behaviors, and then press the stop button, and there was no treats, just relaxation and our connection work. So it was important to have that relaxation and connection work established so that Fitty wasn't hypervigilant looking for treat earning behaviors when we pressed the stop button. He actually enjoys the process of relaxation as much as he enjoys the process of doing treat earning behaviors. But doing those communication buttons with Fitty has been such a valuable tool, because he does get really frustrated when he doesn't know what the answer is. So allowing him to have some control over whether he's going to do the treat earning behaviors and figure out what the answer is, or if he's going to do just the relaxation and connection work, has really like taken our relationship forward again, because he can communicate with me. I just need a little break. I just need to like unwind the brain, relax the brain, and then we can try again. And so that has significantly de-escalated like his frustration associated behaviors, which were always the ones that were just, you know, he'd start pawing and bullying and, you know, pushing me around. So rather than just like mind your manners, giving him the voice to say, I don't know the answer and I'm frustrated, give me a moment and I'm going to try again, has made learning a lot more fun for him. And then another scenario that we've worked with choice is different tools for what we're going to use for our targeting and what would essentially be our whip tool. So like using the dressage whip or the crop. So we're playing with Sammy in this one, so giving him the option between two to target, whether he wants to target the horse or the wand. And you can like establish whether they have a particular preference, or it can, like, especially when we're doing treat training, it can be tricky with their problem solving. So if they decide that there's one thing that they're touching in particular that's definitely getting them the treat. So if you've cued in just to touch, but you can see like he's alternating between the two. This is probably just one of those situations where there's not a real preference towards one or the other. But you can see there's a clear preference towards not working with the whip at all. So this is where we could do some transferable skills, so targeting the whip to cue like a more positive relationship with the whip, and then you could use choice and replace the whip with the other tools that you're playing with. Until they build up a better relationship with the whip, and also a better relationship with what is supposed to happen as a result of using the whip. Like, the whip is not supposed to be there to force submission or force behaviors out of them. It's a word, and the word is away from. And if they don't have the relationship with the whip, they need to have the relationship with the person to know that, you're not going to use it for punishment. So we can see Sammy giving us some clear indications between, the things that he does like and the things that he doesn't like. Quite happy with the inflatable flamingo, but the cat toy flamingo, I don't know what you call the cat things where you tease the cats to play with you, whatever they are, he is okay with but becomes less interested in. And so this is the kind of bonus of doing this work with protected contact first at liberty. You can allow for the at liberty part of it, which means that if they are having an emotional response to it, whether it's like fear, aggression, frustration, curiosity, whatever emotional response they're having to it, it's like completely fine for them to experience that, and we're still safe. And we can work a lot on our emotional self-regulation and emotional conditioning just through this process alone, and we can build out a whole new relationship with our tools and with us. So here's the same thing with April, with using their tools. I have done a training on this video with April in about how poorly I was reading her cues, like misreading a lot of her cues. So we don't have like a huge relationship established training wise. We have like a fairly decent working relationship established, with her just being at liberty, and moving into her yard and moving different places to, like, just together outside of the training environment. And with a lot of the work that I do with April, the relationship is there to do a lot of it without treats. And then if I'm just asking for more high value, more high value asks, then I bring the treats out. But you can see that she gets a little bit overstimulated with her treats. So this is why we use the protective contact as well, is that stops the frisking and the pushing and whatnot. So the thing that I was doing wrong in this one, that's really normal, is like after I asked her out of my space, I'd take a step back, and remember that the stepping into them is the sending away, but the step back is the invitation in. So that's where the mixed signals are, is I'm sending her away and then inviting her in, and then sending her away and then inviting her in, and feeling like she's chewing my space, but I keep inviting her in. So that's a really normal mistake to make when you're working with the horses. And what is an easy rule of thumb to go with, to know, like, if you're kind of working together at this point, is if you can work, if you're moving your horse's feet, then you're telling them what to do, and if they're moving your feet, they're telling you what to do. So you can see the way that I'm taking those steps backwards out of her space, and so she's moving my feet. With April, that's not really a problem, because she is like a very, very submissive, friendly horse. Like, she's not going to really escalate behaviors anywhere other than being a people pleaser and getting her knickers in a twist when she's trying to be a good girl. And so that's like not really ever a problem. It's more of a problem if you've got, your horses in the more confident quadrant of the pushiness or the aggressiveness. So if you've got, like your Clydes, your Drafties, your Percherons, anything that's going to start pushing over top of you, pushing into you to move your feet, that's where you want to be careful about whether they're moving your feet or you're moving their feet. So just having a little practice there of using the cat tickler as an away from cue. So giving her the option of the 3 to target, and then using the one that she targets as the word, and the word is away from. You can see that not always she's going to have like the most appropriate response to it. So there she's like, I don't know what you're doing with me. I don't know what the answer is. I don't know what you're using. So remember, we can just start with stand with relaxation, but when our horses get hypervigilant with the treats, then we kind of lose a bit of that quality of relaxation. So again, another good opportunity to get your lesson plan out at the end of the training session and do that reflection work with your horse, and figuring out if you need to approach it differently the next time. It's also a good opportunity for, like, if you can get it videoed, understanding if the being able to see the body languages that you wouldn't necessarily see in the moment. When you're in the moment, you kind of are feeling a lot more than you're seeing. And so she felt quite good when I was working with her. I didn't feel like tension or stress or resistance or anything like that, so I was quite happy to continue with her. But you can see like where I just did not do a great job with my effectiveness of my communication. So it's good to have the opportunity, if you do, to just you don't even need to video everyone, just video, you know, every now and then, and just check in on where you're at. And then it's good to have that reference as well, like being able to critique yourself, and being able to look back and see how far you've come. You know, one of the hardest things for us is the recognition that the work that you're doing is actually achieving things, especially if you've spent a really long time on the same exercises. Oh, she's so cute. I love these people pleasers. They're so sweet and sensitive. She's definitely the kind of horse that I enjoy working with. So this is a little bit of the work that Sarah and I did together with Gunnar. He really did not like the fairy wand. He just like completely blocked it out, tuned it out. So what we're going to do is give him a choice between his tools. So holding, same with the brushes. And sometimes, like, we'd just done a bunch of targeting with the fairy wand, but then he wasn't responding to it when we used it with him. So it, you know, if you're going to do a lot of targeting with your tools and then ask for choice, they are going to probably get a little bit, you know, do you want target? They're probably not going to choose. But you can see both of the horses really liked the feather duster, and Sammy preferred the fairy wand over the feather duster. This is what makes it fun, right? It's like, you know, getting to know who they are. How ridiculous is it that they don't really like the fairy wand, but they do like the feather duster? How fun is it to, like, you know, give them a hobby pony and see if they like interacting with the hobby pony? You know, there's so many fun things that can make this enjoyable, that's not just like, that has the end result of training because you're spending time with them, has the end result of connection building because you're spending time with them, but doesn't have to be like tediously drilling in the answers that we're looking for. You know, you can make it enjoyable for us and the horse, and getting to know them in the process. So when it came time to actually ask him to pick his leg up, he did prefer the dressage whip. And I think that part of that preference is that he knew what the response to it was. So we've got a short riding crop and a dressage whip there as choices. And he's choosing the dressage whip. And it does require a little bit of patience sometimes, same as like our consent work. So some nice little relaxation cues there as he builds in confidence with what what the hell these weird humans are doing. This is the first time that Gunnar has done this choice work, so he doesn't, you know, the first time we introduce anything to our horses, just expect it to not go well, basically, because the horses don't know what they're doing, they don't know what the answer is. If we're doing it in the saddle, they don't have a balance. If we're asking them to coordinate things, they don't have the balance. So but this is a pretty good indication of, you know, that the whip itself isn't, they don't have to be like scared of it or think of it as a tool for abuse or punishment or force or anything. It's a tool for communication that clarifies our ask. It's a word. The word is away from, or in the case of asking them to pick their leg up, it is like away from to pick your leg up. So the different ways that we're going to use it are going to be within like the different variations of how we're going to use the tool to say away from. And then the clarity of defining that word, like it's a really good way of our horses building confidence in how to engage and work with us. Because once they know that it's a word, they know the word is away from, then they can start more confidently problem solving how it's being used and what they're supposed to do. Because part of the stresses that the horses have is not knowing what the answer is. So if our horses don't know what the answer is, that's when they can have that emotional response to us. For Fiddy, he gets frustrated and it escalates to getting angry and aggressive. For Zodi, he gets scared, he runs away. For Gunner, he tunes out. For Sammy, he'll run away. For April, she says, love me. That's where like that connection is a little bit stronger. Or it's also where like her personality, how her personality interacts with the other personality. Like the other horse, you if you watch them with other horses, you'll start to see like these ways that they interact with us play out. So when April is with the herd, she is at the bottom of kind of like the pecking order. Not that we say that they have a pecking order, but basically everybody can send April off her feed. So aka bottom of the pecking order. She can't tell anybody to go off of their feed, but she will share feed with like horses that are up the top. So Angel pretty much looks after the herd and can chase everyone that's not big because she's little off of her feed. And so, but Angel takes that mother role with April, and so we'll share her food with April. So if you watch the way that April interacts with the other horses, if they tell her to ping off, she kind of will move away, but then she'll be like, oh, you don't mean it though, and she'll get like really into that space and really cuddly and like engaged that way. And so that's like, you know, kind of how her personality plays out in training as well, is like if she gets confused or worried or doesn't know what the right answer is, once she's relaxed within her relationship with me, she'll be like, oh, but you just love me and, you know, we'll be friends and we don't really have to worry about that work stuff. Like, just put it to the side. We don't need to think about that. And she just will come in and get that scratch, you know. And then when you have horses like Zodi, where they're uncomfortable with showing their true personality with you, you can see who he has the potential to be when he's securely attached in his relationship with Fiddy. He's like an absolute stirrer. He like just antagonizes the situation. He's like super cheeky and playful. He like will kind of bite at him and bite at him and bite at him and play with me, play with me, play with me, play with me. And then when Fiddy will finally go, stop it, that's when he'll go wee, and he'll, you know, run hot laps. He's just like that playful temperament. And you can see like how Fiddy's kind of temperament is when you're working like that as well. Like he's really in that protector role. He really enjoys looking after Zodi, he's a lot happier having a horse to look after. Some horses are a lot better for having another horse to look after. It really allows them to build confidence in themselves that way. And you can really see his personality with Zodi, where he takes that protector role. He really enjoys it. But then, when Zodi is annoying him, he gets really grumpy at him and tells him to go away. He does share his food with Zodi, but only once he's not hungry. So that initial 5 to 10 minutes of him gorging himself, then he will let Zodi eat his hay. But if Zodi comes in before that, he'll chase him away. So you can see the way these aspects of their personality play out when they interact with each other, and you get the opportunity to see the potential for who they could be if they are scared of you or people, or if they have had that trauma. You'll see the way that their personality kind of comes out when they're working with other herd members in that herd environment, and how they deal with the other horses telling them to go away from their food or to do things or to follow them, how they follow. If they're quite happy to go off and everybody else follows them, or if somebody else walks away, do they follow? What are their innate levels of confidence and security within those herd dynamics? And that starts to give you an indication of different ways that are appropriate for working with your horse. You don't have to do all the trouble shooting yourself if you have a herd that you can put your horses with. You can watch a lot of that conversation play out without it being directed towards you. So that's it for today. If you have any fun ways that you're going to try using choice, I'd love to hear it. We love you guys experimenting and putting your own lesson plans together and figuring out different options. One of the ones that I would like to do is the bitless and the bitted bridle with Fiddy, which way he would choose to go and to alternate between them. So if there's anything that you end up trying that you really enjoy with the horses, with the choice, let us know. Take some video, we'd love to see it. Otherwise, thanks for watching, and we will see you soon. Bye.